Awesome. Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So we're back going to be talking about Survivor Season 35, a great double episode this week. I was afraid they would be shortening 2 episodes into the 1-hour time slot, but we got 2 full hours, actually less with commercials, but 2 full hours of Survivor, a super, super great episode. I really feel like this is a turning point of the game, and it was so hyped. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa. And last week we kind of talked about, or last podcast we talked about how we were kind of worried because this double episode was going to set the tone for the rest of the game. But I can say that I, at least, was not disappointed with how it shook out.
Yeah, I really feel like the producers picked 2 good episodes to put back to back because you could pick any like pair of episodes, but I really feel like with the first episode as the turning point and then the second episode as sort of like a fallout kind of episode, like it really sets the tone, I feel like, for the rest of the game. Everyone left in the game. The final 7 is it now? Yeah, it's like I feel like any of them has potential to win, and they all do have like stuff on their Survivor resumes that could warrant them a win in this game.
Yeah, I feel like there are definitely some people that I don't really like want to win at this point, but like objectively, none of them are that bad as far as like actually playing the game and not just being goaded along, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like after that first episode, JP gets literally like one line the entire episode, and then he's voted out. I was fucking dead when I saw that. It was so great.
Yeah, I was just like, why? Like, I feel like the producers must have recognized at this point that JP is just kind of like a waste of space and screen time. So I feel kind of bad for him just because it kind of sucks to be on Survivor and then like barely actually like be on Survivor, but is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. He didn't seem like super boring on his Ponderosa video. So maybe he just like didn't talk about strategy or anything while on the island, but like he seemed like a cool dude from his Ponderosa video. So I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, I feel like that's just one of those mysteries we're never going to be able to solve.
Yeah, so maybe wish we saw more of JP so we could have like been more like holy shit about the first boot, but I feel like the like JP going home out of like the Chrissy Ryan JP alliance was monumentous in itself. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like the thing with this is more like why didn't they choose someone else to go home rather than like why did they choose JP? You know?
Yeah, I feel like that's what I wrote in my notes. So we'll get to that when we talk about Tribal Council. Starting with the reward challenge, I feel like we could make this one at home, maybe, Alyssa. We could practice our feet skills and do a like DIY Survivor tutorial. And with that, say shameless self promo. You guys should watch our Towers of Hanoi reward challenge DIY video that was just posted. So it's a video before this one.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those things, like, even if people, like, train for Survivor by doing a ton of puzzles or, like, doing cardio or practicing swimming or whatever, like, training your foot dexterity is not something that I feel like people think about all that often.
Yeah, and so I feel like good feet skills, I don't know, we could totally practice this, I feel like. Mike screws it up, and then Lauren wins the challenge. So it was her second win in a row. And at first, I was sort of like, uh-oh. I feel like Lauren could be painted as maybe like a challenge threat or challenge beast because of this. So I was really glad in like the next like immunity challenge, reward challenge, immunity challenge, Lauren didn't win. So then it sort of like takes the heat off of her back and then like allows other people to win. And so like they aren't like gunning for Lauren because she's winning all these immunities.
Yeah, one of my least favorite things in Survivor is, like, when people go on an immunity streak because then you, like, never really get to see their gameplay. And I feel like I talk about it a lot with, like, Joe Anglem, where it's like, he was safe for the first however many days of second chances. So it's like you never really get to see him actually play until basically up when he's booted.
Yeah. And I feel like because, yeah, when you're winning immunities, like your guard, I guess, could be sort of down because, you know, you're safe. You just have to keep your alliance members safe. But I do feel like we've seen immunity winners, they're sort of like less so in the strategic game, or maybe it's just producers not showing us their strategic game. But like, yeah, so I'm glad it's a diversity of people winning immunities, and so maybe it's because the cast booted like the immunity threats or challenge beasts throughout the season so far, as one would in a stereotypical season of Survivor. So maybe that's the reasoning, because I feel like everyone now is sort of like equal playing field on reward or immunity challenge like abilities.
I feel like Devin could maybe be argued to be like the most challenge inclined of all of the people like left, but I don't think he's won an individual challenge yet. So even though he like looks super athletic,
Yeah, which is like weird. You'd think like, oh, Devin and Ben would be like super strong, but neither of them have won. So, yeah. Lauren picks Devin and then Ben and then Ashley for the reward challenge. And I don't know, I thought Ryan was like saying, oh, I don't see anything into it. Like, I thought he was sort of lying, like you don't want them to seem like suspicious of you, thinking like, oh, like this person brought these people, they're probably forming an alliance kind of thing. But then like during the episode, apparently he really didn't think this foursome was like doing anything out of the ordinary, which is sort of like when someone wins a reward challenge and picks like X amount of other people, won't you always be sort of like suspicious, and even in the order that they picked them too? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like Ryan didn't want to seem paranoid, but at the same time, this might be one of the times where being paranoid is a good thing. Just because, like, I feel like with their whole strategy, that maybe Ryan and Chrissy could have, like, picked up on after the first tribal council that indicated that Ben wasn't actually, like, on the outs like they were, but
Yeah, I don't know. So I feel like at first I was like, oh yeah, you know, Ryan's trying to play it cool, like that's really good. You don't want Lauren or any of the three the reward to think like this or this person is thinking that we're strategizing, blah blah blah. So I was like, oh great, like he's lying. But then like throughout the episode, Chrissy and Ryan were just like super cocky. Throughout the entire thing, and they like even were like, oh, are we being too like, should we be worried about the seven not, and like even like making comments of like, oh, this is easier than it's supposed to be kind of thing.
yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where, like, they both didn't really want to be worried, but at the same time, they knew they should be. So it had this weird element to it where it's like they both knew that they should have been worried, but didn't really follow their gut, which I thought was interesting because normally those two, like, seem to be pretty intuitive players, but I guess I don't really know what happened there because it feels like a disconnect for me between, like, the rest of their game and this episode.
Yeah, because I feel like Chrissy's always counting numbers. Ryan seems like he's playing the game like all the time. So I feel like it was really weird to see them, like you said, like the disconnect of like them always sort of being on top of things, always counting numbers, always like knowing what's happening, versus like this idealized version of like, oh, we're getting to this seven. And like I feel like both of them, Ryan and Chrissy, are both like super lovers of the game, as Chrissy was like 16 years I've been trying kind of thing, to have this sort of lapse in judgment where Chrissy or Ryan could have easily been the person targeted to go home. And I feel like in an alternate universe, like the majority would have picked Chrissy or Ryan over JP to go home at this point. So I don't know, like that was just like very, I guess, concerning. And just to see like Chrissy and Ryan being super annoyed at the Joe and Mike, who nicknamed themselves the Cocoa Nuts. Like, I don't know. I feel like you're not having good management of the people on the bottom, on the outs, if you're still outcasting them, because like you can use these people. It's not like you're gonna vote every single healer out bam in a row. Like something is gonna change, I feel like. And just like watching the show, I feel like that's something you sort of have to think about.
Yeah, and I feel like it's so typical in Survivor too for like there to be like a large alliance like the Seven, and for the people on the bottom of this alliance to like split and then take out the people on the top so that they're now at the top. So it's like, I don't know. I'm really curious to see like why Ryan and Chrissy like didn't get the like alarm impulses, you know? But
Yeah. And I feel like they were maybe thinking too many steps ahead, because during this sort of scene, we see Chrissy and Ryan talking about who they want to vote out at 7 and 6. And they say they want Ben at 7, Lauren at 6, which I think is really interesting. So maybe like lapse in judgment, like they were thinking too many steps ahead, that they sort of skipped over what was happening right here, right now with the whole Mike and Ben vote outs.
yeah, I thought, yeah. I don't know. It's just I don't really like either of them being Chrissy and Ryan. But I also would have liked if they had like at least caught on, but not been able to, you know, do anything about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting to see them play, I guess, from the bottom in the next episode, because like they've always been in the power seat, they've always been in the majority, and I think um, after the JP and then Joe vote out, I think we could see Chrissy or Ryan go home next time, but then we could also see maybe like a flip to try to get someone like Ben out, because we saw in the second episode a sort of like premonition, I guess, of like people realizing that these other people in their alliance are strong.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me was like now that Ryan's used his idol, it's kind of like he and Chrissy are basically going to have to fight tooth and nail not to be the people who are going out next.
Yeah, and I feel like at least Chrissy has a chance to win immunity challenges, whereas Ryan does not really.
I mean, Ryan could. Like, I feel like Ryan is good enough at puzzles that if they had like a puzzle-ish immunity challenge, it would be down to him and Christy or Chrissy. But I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's like balance beams. Chrissy couldn't get across a balance beam, and then Ryan had a ton of time at the puzzle. Then Ryan could win. But yeah, I think it's interesting. We see the four of Lauren, Ben, Devin, and Ashley go on the reward. And Lauren pitches this amazing idea. I'm like, damn, this is like a great episode for Lauren, these past few episodes. And then especially like this cluster of 2 episodes. Lauren basically says that, oh, she wants to break up the 7 before the 7 wants to break up on them, which is totally like ideological, which is great because we just saw Chrissy and Ryan wanting to vote Ben and then Lauren at the 7 and 6. And like, I don't know, I just thought like, wow, we're seeing a lot of good stuff from Lauren. I really like this idea of trying to break up the 7, because we've seen so much of a pekonging this entire like since post merge, and I'm like, I don't want to see that anymore. Let's get some action.
I'm really excited just because Lauren has like always been like on the fringes of like the show. Like she's never really been a main character except for when she and Patrick were having that big fight, but I thought it was interesting to like get to see her a little more.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because at least for Lauren and Devin, I think both of them were sort of like the right hand person to another person. Lauren being maybe like the right hand woman to Allie, and then Lauren being the right hand woman to Ben, and then Devin always being like Ryan's go-to guys. So I feel like seeing Lauren and Devin sort of step out of like the shadow per se of the other person they were sort of aligned with was really, really great to see this episode. And I think even Ashley too was like starting to try to make big moves. She was the one that wanted to maybe get Ben out this episode, and I think that's really, really good, because I would be ecstatic with a final three of Lauren, Devin, and Ashley.
I think Ashley is the only one that I'm kind of ambivalent on, just because I feel like it's one of those things where it's a really good impulse to want to get Ben out, but at the same time, you need to make sure that your timing is right. Yeah. And I'm not sure if the timing to get Ben out is totally right now, just because like right now he's doing the work of like getting rid of other big threats for you. Someone else is if someone else is painting a target on their back while getting rid of people that you want to get rid of anyways, it's like, let them do that so that when the time comes for you to get them out, it's easier. And also, like, I feel like getting out a power player like Ben and then being like, oh yeah, I got Ben to do all my dirty work and then I got him out, makes you seem a lot more dominant than, and then people aren't as mad at her at the final tribal council, because it's like, I wasn't the one who voted me out. That was Ben.
Yeah, I feel like at first I was like, shoot, I feel like, oh, maybe you should have voted Ben out at the second episode this time. And we could definitely talk about it more during when we talk about the second episode, because it would have been a great blindside. He would have gone home with an immunity idol, which he hasn't told anyone about. So like that would have been good. But then the numbers for like Lauren, Devin, and Ashley would have been more like precarious, because the cocoa nuts could have flipped, and I feel like everyone's going for their own agenda. So yeah, we can talk about that at the end. But yeah, I don't know. Reward, it was have like an information roundtable, so I really feel like this final four deal is like super solidified. I feel like they seem very loyal to the four, and we see that go through the first episode with the JP vote out, and then I feel like it's solidified in the second episode with the Joe vote out and not a Ben blindside. So I really, really feel like this final four could make it to the final four, honestly, and I feel like Ben would maybe be the one to go home at the final four.
Yeah, I feel like Ben is one of those people where it's like he's a really good last minute vote out, just because everyone could agree Ben could win this game over me.
Yeah, so
and I feel like it's kind of like a situation with David in Millennials versus Gen X. Like he got so close that he could taste it, but he was just too much of a threat in the end.
Yeah, and I feel like people definitely realize that Ben is super strategic and like stuff like that, so he could have heat on him maybe in the next few episodes before even a final four deal. But I feel like with his hidden immunity idol, someone is going to get screwed over with it, and then Ben will probably make it past final five, because that's the last time you can use it. And then I feel like if it is a final four of this foursome, I like Ashley, Devin, and Lauren will not be going to a final three with Ben. I think they all realize like he would have too much of like he has a great story, he played a good game, he would definitely win the game kind of thing.
Yeah. And I feel like it's one of those things where it kind of sucks, because like I don't think that Ben right now is thinking in that kind of terms, so I feel like it could be a really nasty blindside for him. Just because like you don't even if you're like, oh, I could totally win this game, you don't think like, oh, my alliance is going to vote me out because they know that they'd all lose to me. You know? Like that's not...
Yeah.
That's not something you think of until like the very vote it's happening, and then you're like, oh, crap.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like Ben, with his final three deal with like Lauren and Devin since like the merge-ish time, would definitely keep him secure, even if Lauren and Devin are going behind Ben's back to work with Ashley to vote Ben out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I feel bad for Ben.
Ben had a good episode this week too. We see right after the reward challenge, Ben finds a hidden immunity idol, so he has the only idol in this game right now, and Lauren has her extra vote secret advantage. So these are the only two things in play. And I don't know, I thought this like scene of Ben finding the idol was sort of weird because he's like, oh, it's my mission, it's my task, my objective, and then he's like, I'm sweeping the area. And I'm like, this is sort of weird. The music in the background was like literally secret spy agent music. I'm like, this is so weird.
I thought it was really funny just because, like, I don't know, they make such a big deal about Ben being a Marine, and it's like, for a while he looked a little bit crazy because he was standing there repeating to himself, in the fishhook, in the fishhook. And I was like, oh, Ben. Like, he just seemed a little goofy, even though that probably wasn't the intention.
Yeah, I was like, I've never heard this music on Survivor before. Ben isn't going to tell anyone about the hidden immunity idol, so I think that's really, really good because information spreads like wildfire. So we see how that works out for other people. So I think Ben having this idol, not telling anyone, it could be like a really great blindside in the next few votes before Final Five.
Yeah, and I really hope Ben doesn't tell anyone. Just
Yeah.
because it's one of those things where in order to fool your enemies, sometimes you have to fool your friends too. And so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, so I think if and when Ben plays the idol, it could be a really, really great blindside of someone good.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful, but I also don't want to get my hopes up too far just because I don't want to be disappointed.
Story of my life. Everything sucks.
Honestly,
So
same.
going into the immunity challenge, it was super interesting because Jeff Probst did the like eating versus non-eat, like eating versus competing aspect of the immunity challenge. So you could choose to sit out and eat food and not have the chance to win immunity, and then you could sit and play the game and then have chance to win immunity. So Ben, Lauren, and Devin choose to sit out, and I don't know. I feel like it was sort of like a bold move, a little bit cocky, like overconfident maybe. But like then you have to factor in all these other things. Like if you think you'll win the challenge, like if you have zero chance of balancing on the triangle, like I guess, but then it's also like, you know, what if? You never know, I guess. And then it's also like, do you think you're safe? But you never really know if you're safe. So I feel like Chrissy and Ryan still compete even though they think they're safe because that's just the game. I feel like you can never sit out for like a food thing like this when you're in Survivor.
I don't know. I think it's one of those things where I was most confused about Devin just because balancing on the top of that triangle looks basically like balancing on a surfboard to me. It's like you're a surf instructor. You could win this challenge and you could probably win it easily. And I don't know. I feel like this also should have been a huge red flag for Chrissy and Ryan because it's like I think Ryan said something to the effect of, "I thought we were all playing a game here," and it's like if he had like taken that line of thinking like one step further, then I feel like he might have been able to figure out that like something was going on.
Yeah, like we see Ryan having a confessional, basically sort of talking like, oh, like I thought, yeah, like we were a team. Why are three people sitting out of the team? Like, thank God Ashley won over Mike and Joe, so now we can vote one of them out. But then I feel like if you see these three people who just went on a reward challenge together and now they choose to sit out of an immunity challenge, is that not something like super sketchy? Because I feel like, you know, reward challenges, going to like a place that isn't your fucking camp on Survivor lets you bond. You have food, you have the helicopter ride, stuff like that. Like, how do you not think something happened on this reward challenge?
Again, I think it's probably just one of those things where what Ryan wished had happened blinded him to like what was actually happening. Or it's like he still wanted to think that all seven were strong and that like going on the reward challenge didn't change that their alliance was still like tight. But yeah, I'm still kind of perplexed about that the more I think about it because I'm like, come on, guys.
And I think honestly, maybe Ryan and Chrissy didn't think like the other four was as smart as them, because we see in the second episode, Ryan says something to the lines of like, I never thought we could be outsmarted or something like that by two 25-year-old surfers. So, maybe Ryan and Chrissy just were like, we are 100% definitely smarter than these people who like just got out of college, whereas like Chrissy's from like MIT or something, like super, super smart. So maybe they just didn't think they could be outsmarted by like people they considered less educated as them.
Yeah,
Which
I
I
think
thought,
it's really interesting. Yeah, one of the things I've been saying about Chrissy like recently is that she's just gotten so cocky, and Ryan has had the same problem about being cocky, and it's like that's one of the worst things that you can be on Survivor, especially when you get all high and mighty, like, oh, I'm so much more intellectual than the rest of these people.
yeah, and I feel like we saw it with Chrissy and Rourke when Rourke was still in the season, how Chrissy was like, oh my God, like, um, us two females are probably the smartest two in this game kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe Chrissy just like doesn't work well with females, because we've never really seen Chrissy in an alliance with another female. So I think in the second episode, when we see like Chrissy and Lauren, and like Chrissy trying to get Lauren to vote their way, like Lauren is not having any of that, and I feel like we've never really seen Chrissy and Ashley talk, so maybe it's something to do with that as well.
Yeah, I feel like Chrissy is just one of those people where she like has an ego and like she's looking for people to feed her ego. And I'm I guess Ryan does that because he's also kind of egotistical, and it's like they can basically just stand around and just be like, "You're so smart. No, you're so smart." type thing.
Yeah, so honestly, I'm glad they got knocked off of their high horse this episode. Ashley wins immunity, and then we see Devin have this amazing, beautiful master plan to get Ben, like to get one of the three, Chrissy, Ryan, and JP, out of the game without really them knowing what's happening. So basically, Devin says like Ben's going to pretend that he's still with Chrissy, Ryan, and JP by voting with their original plan. And so, like, after tribal, Chrissy and Ryan still think Ben's with them so he can gain intel. And I'm like, wow, this is actually so good. I don't know if we've, like, seen something like this before where, like, super great double agenting, and then Lauren, Devin, and Ashley bring in Joe and Mike to get the majority.
I feel like the only thing is with this plan, like, if you already think that Ben is in a position of power in this game, it's like, why do you give someone who's like this powerful already the chance to make alliances without you knowing? Because it's like, if anyone in that alliance saw like Ben interacting with Chrissy and Ryan, they'd be like, oh, it's part of our secret plan. But it's like, he could actually be going under their noses and like, screwing them over basically.
Yeah, I feel like it works both ways. I feel like in the second episode, I was sort of sketched for Ben maybe like getting blindsided because he can't really be seen with Lauren, Ashley, and Devin that much, or else it'd be like super sketchy. So I feel like this whole thing could have backfired, like if Ben got blindsided in the second episode, or if like Ben wasn't super loyal and then actually voted with like Chrissy and Ryan and JP to try to like flip things up or something like that. But I feel like, the foursome, like, I guess really, really trusts each other right now. So I feel like good things are to come for them because of these two votes. I really, really feel like it does solidify that like bond or that alliance between them, because like this whole thing was super risky. I feel like a lot of things could have went wrong on both sides because you're having these conversations, and like it could have swayed someone, honestly.
I thought I was going to sneeze. One of my favorite things also was how much Joe was buying into this whole scenario, like with Ben's acting, and he was like, "To my disloyal knights" or whatever, and how Joe was like, "Yeah, I love this. This is the coolest," and everyone else was like, "Ha ha 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 ha," because they all knew what was like really up.
Yeah, I feel bad for Ben and Mike. Like literally, it must be so hard to play Survivor when no one wants to play with you, so no one will talk strategy, and like this is your lifelong dream, and you're sort of just like on the bum bottom, and no one wants to do anything or make moves to finally get the chance to like have an alliance and like not be on the chopping block for one vote. And then it turns out like everyone is just playing you still. Like that must be so sad.
I feel like it's kind of worse for Joe because like what Mike said about like having the moral high ground or whatever, and it's like they do constantly make Joe a pariah without voting him out. And it's like that would be really frustrating to me if I was Joe, just because it's like if you're gonna make my life miserable, then just vote me out so I can go like chill in Ponderosa and like eat some good food rather than being miserable all day here if you guys are never like planning to take me to the end with you.
Yeah, and even Chrissy says it in the second episode, or maybe in the first one. She's sort of like, oh, we should keep Joe around longer because I think it's funny that he's still here and no one will play with him. So let's vote Mike out, even though Joe's more strategic. So I'm like, honestly, I don't know. I feel like it's like a sense like you're sort of making this person an outcast and then like sort of like poking them with a stick like haha no one wants to play the game with you yet you're still like starving you still have to like have the strategic mindset on because it's still you're still on the game but you can't do anything about your position no one wants to do anything like Mike says he talked to Ryan for 7 days about wanting to make a move wanting to work with him and Ryan shut him down every single time like that kind of stuff must be just so hard and so sad.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny because people are like, "Oh, Joe's a bully," and it's like you said, doing what they're doing to him is kind of like taunting the dog, where it's like they're putting him in a position where he can't do anything other than be rude to them because they're not letting him do anything else.
Yeah, and then even like in the second episode where Joe is like super happy that he's finally in an alliance and I'm like, "Yes, Joe, like finally you can play Survivor." And yet it's still all a joke like okay, we'll talk about it at the reward challenge because I feel like that was a good example. But tribal council, um,
Right.
council it had good acting. They sort of acted like, oh, the seven was still together, the two is on the out, and I don't know. I feel like it was really interesting. Chrissy and Ryan sort of got questions about like um, if the seven will stay together and if other plans are happening, and Chrissy and Ryan sort of give answers to the extent of like it's happening when you don't even know it's happening, and the moment when you stop playing the game, you're left in the dust. And I thought that was really interesting that like they know, like shouldn't they have realized that these things are happening if they didn't think these things are happening? Because like they sort of just said what was happening without like connecting it to their situation.
Yeah, I feel like if you're at Final Tribal Council and Jeff starts like asking these leading questions, you should be more than a little bit suspicious. Because it's like he always asks questions that are relevant to the game in some way, shape, or form. And it's like I feel like that can be like little hints to like what you should be looking for, but might be missing. And yeah.
No, yeah, 100%. Like these were very good leading questions, and I feel like if you do listen to what's aired on TV, because you know Tribal Council is probably a lot longer than the 10 minutes that they show on air, you can sort of get yeah, like a hint of what's about to go down because obviously Jeff sort of knows like who might go home tonight, that kind of thing, and I think you know, it's might just be a lapse of judgment for Chrissy and Ryan being too cocky about their position, like, oh, you know, four people could never flip on me kind of thing. Like, we're too smart for that. Like, that would never happen to me. We're definitely getting to the seven kind of thing. So I feel like, you know, the rug got pulled out from underneath them. And I think it's a good wake up call for those two.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see them play from the bottom. I'm not sure whether or not it'll make me like them anymore, just because I feel like them playing from the bottom might just be them whining about like how they're not on top anymore. And I feel like we kind of got that from Chrissy in the next episode when she was talking about how hard it is. And I was like,
That's how Joe has been played this entire fucking game. Like, we don't want you crying about it.
Yeah. I just think it's one of those things where Joe is one of those villains that's like, he's a villain, but he's also one of those people that you kind of want to root for.
Yeah.
So.
I wouldn't mind seeing Joe play again. I think that'd be interesting to see like how Joe plays when he does have an alliance maybe, or like people to work with. That would be great. But I don't know. I thought Tribal Council was really funny when the third vote for JP came up, because then you're sort of like, WTF, JP should have only gotten 2 votes if it is like Mike and Joe voting JP. So everyone was super shocked. I'm like, LOL, I'm dead. JP gets 1 line this entire episode and then he gets voted out. Like, it was just too good.
Yeah, I was just like, I feel like the editors kind of let me down this season as far as like a lot of people, we never even got to know them even on their like vote out. Like, it's like, it's really hard to feel bad about certain people getting voted out when you don't even really know what their story is.
Yeah, I feel like this episode was only good because it was like a turning tide for the season, I guess. I think it would have been like a great episode if Chrissy or Ryan was voted out, because when JP goes home, you're like he was just sort of there in the first place. I don't really like care either way if he's on the season or not on the season. So I really feel like it's interesting that the majority picked JP to go home rather than like a powerhouse of Ryan or Chrissy to go home.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where like if JP had gone home because like the majority had voted him out, like if he was with Mike and Joe and the majority of voted him out, it would just be like, oh great, they're just following the same old script. So
I feel like maybe a reasoning behind JP is sort of like, let's pull the rug out from under Chrissy and Ryan because they are like legitimate players by voting out like this third person that's just sort of there for them. Like, get rid of one of their numbers, but keep like the good players left in the game so we can have some action, which makes like the show a lot more interesting for viewers, because like I feel like I would rather watch Chrissy and Ryan on the show over JP. But I think maybe strategically, I'm not really seeing like why waste maybe per se a vote on JP when you have really good players left in the game, whereas JP would be an easy goat to the end.
yeah, I feel like the thing is with goats, when you have all these numbers that like basically could be persuaded to do anything to get to the end, it's like that makes it so much more difficult to like make your plans, because it's like if you get rid of as many variables as possible, then it's better, you know?
Yeah, maybe JP might not be easy to predict.
Yeah.
So when they talk about JP, because he doesn't really talk a lot of strategy, so maybe that could be a reasoning as well. We don't know because we don't hear anything from JP and sort of forgot he was on the season the past few episodes.
Yeah, JP could exist, or he could just be like a fever dream shared by all Survivor players, or Survivor watchers.
Yeah, so JP goes home. Great first episode. Changed the tides of the game, I feel like. So now Ryan and Chrissy, we go back to camp and they're sort of like pissed off, bummed out about this situation, like, oh, boo-hoo, oh, me, like, how could this happen? And I'm like, haha, I don't want to hear you whine.
Yeah, I feel like it's so stupid where you start whining as soon as you start losing, because it's like that 6-year-old who throws a tantrum when they lose a game, but whenever they're winning, they're like, haha, I'm better than you. And it's like playing Survivor, your enjoyment on playing Survivor shouldn't be contingent on whether or not you're winning, if you're truly a super fan. Because, like, Joe was still having a ball, even though he was on the outs for most of it. And so it's like, come on.
I feel like it's also sort of like a lot of the people this season are very gung-ho about winning and the whole aspect of being a winner, because I feel like we've seen a lot of people that gotten voted out so far. They're like, oh, I've never lost something in my life. Like, I think Desi, when she was voted out, she's like, oh, like losing is a new feeling for me kind of thing. A lot of the people, I think Allie even is like, you know, I've never lost kind of thing. So I feel like, especially with Chrissy and Ryan, these are probably two people who have never really felt losing or have experienced loss or like not being a winner in their entire life. So I feel like losing equals not fun, whereas winning means fun.
Yeah. And I feel like also whining about it isn't what gets you in a better place in the game. Like if you're just going to continue to like be bitching about how you're on the bottom, no one from the top is going to want to play with you because you're just not like fun to be around.
Yeah, we don't hear Mike and Joe whining about themselves on the bottom. They sort of made a joke on it to try to be like annoying, to try to like stay in the game longer because they think something can change, and it's like it's still a game. Like you're not gonna roll over and die right now just because one vote didn't go your way. Like and Mike's or Joe and Mike's whole game didn't go their way. Like unlikely alliance, first of all.
Yeah, I really wasn't into their behavior, but I also really wasn't into like the way that like everyone on the top was talking about how great they were now, because it's like the same thing is true. Where like once you start winning, you shouldn't get too cocky because that's literally what made Chrissy and Ryan able to be like tripped the way they were. They were so cocky about it.
Yeah, and I think we see that sort of on the reward challenge. Devin, Joe, Ben, and Ashley won the like boating challenge, and then they do something on they do the puzzle on the island. So they win and they go out to the spa day challenge. And I don't know, I thought like Ben was a great actor pretending he's on the outs because he still has to pretend he's on the outs because Devin, Joe, and Ashley are working together, whereas Ashley are actually the ones together, and Joe is still on the out. So I feel like this entire reward challenge, Joe was sort of the butt of the jokes. You know, people make side eyes at each other, like, ha ha ha, Joe's so dumb, like, he doesn't get the joke. And then, like, yeah, like we said before, I feel like Ben doing this Academy Award winning acting really is great for his Survivor resume to say like, oh, I pulled something like that off. I acted with you guys, blah, blah, blah. Like that would be great for final tribal council speech.
I feel like it's good as long as you present it in a certain way, because being like, haha,
Yeah.
you guys are all stupid and I outsmarted you is different from being like, oh, I did this thing that made you guys all think I was on your side. And I feel like one of the things with people who consistently like lose Survivor, like people like Russell Hantz who have like been to the final twice but still haven't won, it's like it's all in how you frame yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like if he says it in a way that's like more personable and like I did it for the game reason rather than like, yeah, y'all are dumb people and you were tricked by me, then it could work out. Mentioned this before, like Chrissy and Ryan were bad at managing sort of like the people on the bottom. And I mean, I think we see it in this second episode where Mike and Joe are not going to work with Chrissy and Ryan. At least this vote because they weren't good at keeping them close. I think maybe I was thinking that Mike and Joe were super, super loyal to like Lauren, Devin, and Ashley, where they could be a solid five-some if they voted Ben out this episode. But seeing Joe's Ponderosa, they sort of also had plans to get Devin out. So I really think voting Joe out this vote was a good move because now it solidifies like the foursome and it gives them numbers. It doesn't matter where Mike goes because they have a four to vote someone from this three out next week.
Yeah, and just like I feel like getting rid of Joe is also a good thing just because it is kind of rude to continue like stringing him on. So even though I like Joe, I was glad to see him gone. So
Yeah, and I think Chrissy and Ryan are only reaching out to like Mike, Joe, and Lauren because they're desperate, and I think this might be like a really, really big flaw in their gameplay, because you can't just talk to the people on the bottom when you're on the bottom. You have to sort of like keep these relationships like the entire game, even if you aren't, if like you're voting their people out, you still have to sort of, so when you need a favor or when you want to bring these people into the fold, like right now, Mike and Joe are definitely not wanting to go work with you guys, and same with Lauren.
Yeah. I think we've seen this problem, like, not just this season, but, like, with other seasons where it's like you can't just treat other people like numbers that you can just call on whenever, like, you don't have enough numbers, you know? Like, people aren't disposable.
Yeah, so they're sort of like using them as a number, and I think Chrissy's always like counting on her hands. And I mean, I don't know, like Mike said, I think if you wanted to work with me, like you would have talked to me a week ago, kind of thing. And like once you keep shooting someone down for that long, like nay, it's not gonna happen. Like you should keep them sort of like at arm's length, but sort of like friendly. I feel like or something.
Yeah, like, I feel like there's a lot to be said to be able to be friends in the game of Survivor without being allies. And I feel like there are, like, some people who have done it really well and some people who have done it really poorly, just because you want to be friendly enough with people that, like, they're not constantly bitter at you. And, like, if you do need to call on them, they might want to, like, come into the fold, but you don't want to be so friendly that they feel horribly betrayed when you vote them out.
Yeah, or like betrayed by you if like you tell them one thing and you do another kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, immunity challenge. We see the puzzle is the great equalizer. I think this was definitely like Chrissy's to win throughout the whole thing. Chrissy comes to this puzzle. She's able to bang it out super fast, and I think it was really interesting seeing because one, Ryan is safe with the idol, and two, Chrissy wins immunity, so she's safe. So I thought it would make tribal really interesting.
Yeah. I think it's also really interesting because, like I said, Ryan used his idol, so it's like they both knew that they were going to be safe that vote, which means that like the alliance, they thought that Ben was going home because like he was the only one in their bottom three that like wasn't safe. So I thought it was a really interesting blindside for like basically anyone who wasn't the four.
Yeah, I definitely see that also because yeah, Chrissy and Ryan were like, bye, Ben, kind of thing. Like, it's been great knowing you and playing with you, but like, whatever happens tonight, like, we're still good. And I think that was really interesting. And then Chrissy says something like, oh, that alliance was super tight after the votes are read. And I think wake up call for Chrissy and Ryan next episode tomorrow morning kind of thing when they realize that Ben was sort of in the majority once they count those numbers and see like how the numbers played out for that vote. So I feel like that would be really interesting to see next episode that like Christy and Ryan are still on the bottom and like
Yeah, one of the things I like the most about this double episode is like it leaves a lot open for next week too. And I feel like sometimes like this season it's been like I have no idea what's happening next week because they didn't really leave anything tied up. Like there were no loose ends.
what do you mean?
Like sometimes it's like we were like we don't know where they're going from here. Like this could go so many different ways. But we kind of like have an idea of like where this season is going next now.
Okay, yeah. I feel that. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Before tribal, Devin says like they'll split the vote between Ryan and Ben, and then you'll vote Ben in the revote because it'll be time. That's what they tell Mike and Joe, and I think that's good for Devin thinking of a plan like that. Like that's a great like fake plan to facade saw the real plan really going to happen and they're actually going to vote Joe.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because attention to detail is one of the greatest things that you can have when you're lying to someone, just because, like, if even one detail is a little bit off, then it's like they can pick it up and then no bueno for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's also like super interesting. I think we say that word too much, but super interesting that like Devin is like, oh, Lauren has the advantage, this advantage kind of thing where she gets an extra vote. And I think on Survivor, it'd be super interesting to like immunity idols. What if I just made up a bunch of fake have and just lie to people about it? So you could be like, yeah, I have an advantage that lets me like be immune at tonight's Trump vote for me kind of thing, and no one can really prove it or like disprove it, so you could like fake people out how you do with a fake hidden immunity idol kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting just because it's like if you were to have, since like people expect you to go up and play your advantage, then it might, you know, my thought got lost somewhere. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you could pull some crazy shit out of your ass and, like, be like, yeah, it's a new thing on Survivor. Like, I'm immune at this vote only, and I get an extra vote. So don't vote for me, guys. Or, like, something like, you know, like, not too crazy, but, like, something believable. And, like, you could be like, I threw away the piece of paper kind of thing. Like, it's just happening at Tribal tonight, and, like, there's no proof, and there's no proof, and there's no, like, way to disprove what you just said.
Yeah, I feel like that's also really interesting just because a lot of those things, the advantages that we've seen are like play after the votes are cast, but like before they're read, like the same way immunity idols are. So it's like if you let slip to the person on the other alliance that like you're going to be immune tonight, then they're going to vote for someone else, and then that person can like use like a real advantage.
Yeah, so I feel like I don't know, I think that could be really interesting, like a new kind of strategy in Survivor, like a ton of lying about everything in the game. And I don't know, yeah, Tribal Council at first I was sort of like, why not vote Ben? It longer. Yeah, definitely. If you voted Ben out this episode, you would have 3 with Lauren, Ashley, and Devin. Then you would sort of have Mike and Joe in the middle, and they could still be loyal to that 3 and make a 5. But if they really wanted someone like Devin out, like Joe said in his Ponderosa video, they would probably flip to go with Christy and Ryan, and that would be a 4-3. So I think voting Joe this episode solidifies like at least the 4 is safe because it doesn't matter where Ryan goes, Chrissy and or Mike goes, Chrissy and like in the minority, and they want to flip and vote Ben out, but I really, really feel like the foursome has been solidified with this vote.
Yeah, and like we said, I feel like all of the other people in the foursome will realize that there's a better time to get Ben out, and that's after they've gotten Ryan and Chrissy out. Because it's like if they vote out Ryan or Chrissy, then they can just flip on Ben whenever because they'll definitely have the numbers, even if and stuff.
Yeah, so I feel like if we see like Ryan or Chrissy go home next time, then it'd be like, you know, the other one would go home 6, Mike would probably go home at 5, or someone would be idled out at 5, or something like that, and then Mike, Ben would go home at 4. I really, really feel like final 3 could be Devin, Ashley, Lauren, unless maybe Devin, I feel like, could get idled out by Ben.
Yeah, I feel like Devin, or possibly if Ben gets wind of the fact that Ashley wants him out, then that could be a thing that happens. So
yeah, so I think it's really interesting. We have the idol in play and we have the extra vote advantage in play. So I feel like depending on when you can use that extra vote thing as like the last set point, it could be really interesting because right now the 4 has a majority, and so you would probably use it maybe at Final Four, if you can still use it then, to get not a tie vote of 2-2. But it seems like the 4 is like, I feel like it wouldn't be a 2-2 within this 4, because I feel like the 3 would be very willing to vote out Ben. So maybe at 6 we could see something, but I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it's best for everyone involved to like actually stick with this 4, because I know normally we're like, oh no, 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 you want to flip on your alliance so you can get in a better situation. But I feel like it's really better to like not play with the underdogs when you get this far in the game, because the jury loves an underdog story.
Yeah, I feel like right now the 4 is like pretty much well set to make it to Final Four, unless like someone maybe on the bottom of the foursome feels like they won't make Final Four, and then they try to make a move with people next week to try to get like one of the 4 out. But then that just sort of like makes it like you can't guarantee your spot in the Final Four, whereas with the 4 right now, you can guarantee you're at least making Final Four. But say if like Devin flips to go vote with Mike, Chrissy, and Ryan to vote like Ben out or something, or Lauren, like then you can't guarantee that you'll be in the Final Four. Whereas with Lauren, Ashley, Ben, and Devin, you're guaranteed a spot. Really fucked up. But you're like, it's an easier ride to the Final Four is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like from here on out, like the trajectory of the game is kind of like set now.
Yeah, so hopefully the episodes are still interesting, even though we like how this shindig will go down. Crazy stuff's happening. Survivor finale in a few weeks. They just announced the premiere date for the next season of Survivor in late February. So that is super exciting. And like, it's almost winter break. We have finals, and then we're going home, and then Survivor's ending, and we hopefully will have a lot of videos for you during the Survivor hiatus this new year.
I'm really upset because I have a final on the day of the Survivor finale that ends at 8 p.m. and I have to be moved out that day. So it's like I have to go from my final to my house and then start watching Survivor, and it's like, what if I don't get to watch Survivor? Oh my gosh, it's so stressful.
Yeah, so great episode, double episode. We'll see you guys this upcoming week in a few days. So thank you so much for watching.
Bye.